parents came here before, I think they've been here for 30 years or so, 30, 20 years. And actually before my granddad, he went to Scotland to work in the takeaway business as well. So I guess my family has sort of a rich history of, not really rich, but it has a history of emigrating to other countries and finding work. I guess you could call it that. Growing up in Ireland is very different, of course, because it's about the. I think nowadays people tend to look at the color of your skin and your appearance rather than the inside of your heart. And whilst I was growing up as a kid in Ireland, it was very different because during the time there wasn't that much Chinese people in Ireland. So generally you'll get these one or two racist comments about your skin tone or the way you look, all that stuff. So I think it's really about just diversifying just society really nowadays, because we're in the 21st century now, and people are coming, they're just coming together in from different countries, and they're just learning to live with one another, and I think that's really great. Deep down, I'm more of a Irish person than Chinese. And I think that's because the way I was brought up here and the way I was I've learned to adapt to Irish culture more than Chinese culture. Not saying that I've ignored my Chinese traditions. I very much keep my Chinese traditions of education, family, etc. all that stuff. My parents wanted me to go, so in a way they kind of forced me to. And they kind of forced me to learn Chinese then. I think no one really liked going to Chinese school, let's be honest. Not everyone hated it, because who wants to wake up really early on a Sunday morning and go straight to Chinese school to learn Chinese? But the thing is, I dropped out when I was after 6 or 7 years, so I didn't really benefit the whole bunch from the Chinese school then.
Doing an interview on the phone, they would never think you're Chinese unless they see your face, Usually they do take it that you are Chinese. They wouldn't take it that you're Irish-born Chinese, because that's not very likely, But whenever I did work, and then they would ask me if I'm Chinese actually, yeah, and it just turns out that I'm Irish-born Chinese, and they just think that's actually quite unique. It's quite different from they usually see, Identity, yeah. Chirish? No, chirish doesn't count. No. Yeah, I mean, I suppose you have different identities when you're kind of mixed. I mean, when I say mixed, I mean kind of IBC, Irish-born Chinese. Because when I'm in Ireland, then, or even when I'm out on the street with my friends, I'm Irish. But when I'm at home, I mean as in, inside physically in my house, or even in Hong Kong, I'm Chinese. So I mean, in that way, you're kind of constantly switching between Irish Chinese. You're different identities that way. So there's not one fixed identity. You have to understand. When you're in a relationship, there's always that time where you have to go meet the parents. But see, my parents, their English isn't the best, you see. So I think I would always consider them if I was to be in a relationship. And also there would be some sort of a cultural difference, I suppose, as well. I mean, my parents wouldn't be that familiar with the Irish culture in terms of they wouldn't know how to, well, they know how to greet one another, but maybe not, they wouldn't know how to do it the Irish way, if there is one anyway. But either way, there would be some sort of some degree of awkwardness, I would believe anyway. And if I was in a relationship with maybe someone who was Chinese, it would make life easier for my mum and dad if we were to meet the parents, So in that way, if I was to be in a relationship, I do take it into consideration my parents. Yeah.
would just be half and half, but I would think myself. But people won't take, people probably say 80 or whatever. But I think it'd be half and half because traditional, because both of my parents are actually Chinese. So I'd be just kind of half and half. That's what I think, that I'm Irish and Chinese or whatever. It's just for working for my parents, and I get some experience to communicate with other people. So that's why I don't mind to work, because then I get to, to improve talking to Irish people, to improve my English and all that thing as well. So that's why I say I don't mind to work with my family, because they have takeaway, so they have to communicate with Irish people. So if I have a chance, we want to work somewhere else, like not stick with family all the time. And then after I got married and then I changed it to this and work with Irish people, it feels different when a family probably you don't get as much as free time than you're working outside. So that's why I think for now it's better that I work with people from not within the family, so it's actually get more freedom.
People haven't really actually called me Chinese. They call me more Chinese because of the way I look. But then when they get to know me a bit more, they'll be like, "Oh, you're not Chinese, you're Irish." So I wouldn't know what the feeling be like being called Irish. So I would reckon I'd be more Irish. At the very start of primary school, I was kind of feeling different because in primary school and junior infants, I was the only Asian person in there, and everybody else was Irish, and then I kind of got bullied a bit. And then later on, during primary school, about 4th class, 5th class, then it kind of stopped, because then I kind of got used to it, and I didn't really have good English back then, so I kind of had to get extra English classes. So I couldn't really communicate with a lot of people in primary school. But then after a while, I got really good English, and then I can communicate with other people. And then when I started first year in De La Salle College, it was basically natural for me. Like, I can talk to anyone straight away in first year college, in first year secondary school, sorry. I like the language, yeah, it's really good to talk. Like, you know, sometimes if you're talking about a secret about someone, you'll be like, "Oh, I'm talking Cantonese, so they can't understand me."
I'm more Irish because I think I'm more connected to the Irish community. I have more Irish friends. My English is definitely better than my Chinese. I used to attend Chinese school so I can learn how to read and write, but because we never really get to use it, I don't think that I'm not really as fluent as I should be. But definitely my English would be my first language. I can speak Cantonese. My Mandarin is not good at all. I can understand a little bit if you speak very, very slowly, but definitely my Cantonese is good enough that if I move to Hong Kong, I think I can survive. When I go back to Hong Kong, I feel at home as well. Although people in Hong Kong can tell that I'm not from Hong Kong. They can tell by the way I dress, the way I look. I think I speak Cantonese differently. They said I have a bit of a Western accent. That my parents are very strict when it comes to education, because growing up my parents were coming from poor backgrounds, so they never had a chance to finish primary school or secondary school. So because we have the opportunity in Europe now to get the best education possible, they're very strict that we kind of make use of that and develop us to our best abilities, make sure we get our degrees, make sure we get a good job so we don't need to work as hard as them. When it comes to dating, my parents are very traditional. They want me to date and marry a Chinese man one day. They don't want the Chinese culture and language to be lost in our generation. But myself, I personally more appeal to dating the Irish boys, because it's kind of people that I've been growing up with and I can understand them better.
Yeah, the tradition is basically that when your parents go back to their native country. So if my parents went back to Hong Kong, yeah, tradition says that basically the son is to go back with the parents to live in the native country. They would be very considerate on whether I should move back with them or not to Hong Kong. Certainly if I was to study in Hong Kong or if I was to work there, then yeah, I mean, I would go back to Hong Kong with them. But let's say if I was to stay here or if I had to work abroad somewhere else, they would understand that, you know, this tradition can't be kept, you know. But that's not to say, like I said, I can't visit them, you know. I would visit them a lot more frequent, you know. So yeah, that's that.
I kind of want to stay in Ireland because Ireland would be more flexible. It's not as stressful as Hong Kong. Living in Hong Kong apparently is a bit harder than living in Ireland. Like Hong Kong, your monthly wages would be about divided by 10 times here. So just say if my career was about €3,000 a month, over there is only €300 if you convert it. So I'd rather stay here and then let them go back, and then I just send money back to them every week, every month, and then they can use the money to buy food and live off me basically.
Both of them is born in Hong Kong, so they have totally in a Chinese way. No matter what way, they want to go back to Hong Kong for everything. But they were asking me, do I want to go back? No, I would prefer here than over there.
I think if my parents decide to move back to Hong Kong, I'd visit them a lot, but I think with me, my home is always in Ireland. I prefer to stay here. This is the country I'm familiar with now, and I have no friends in Hong Kong either, so I wouldn't know what to do.
I'd like to go back to Hong Kong to live, generally because I'd miss everything about Ireland really, about the food, the weather, just the people in general as well. Yeah, the girls definitely. Very nice. Irish girls.